Alright, we're going to go over your oral cavity here. First term is your vestibule, and that's this space right here between your lip and your teeth. And so that's where you put your chew, if you're a chewer. Then we're going to have the lingual frenulum. That's going to be this little piece on the bottom of the tongue that connects the tongue to the bottom of the mouth. You can feel it in your own mouth. Then we're going to have the gingiva. The gingiva are your gums. So you can see them, little pink line right there. It's not shown real well on the model, but it's one of those things you can feel a lot better in your own mouth. This gingiva is your gums. Okay, so then we're going to look at your lingual papilla. And so I'll grab this other model for you. Okay, so taking a look at this tongue, your lingual papilla are these large mounds on the back here. Okay, so each one of those is a lingual papilla, and the taste buds sit within the lingual papilla. Alright, back to this model. A couple of structures we've had before is your hard palate. Remember, your hard palate is made up of your maxilla and your palatine. And then your soft palate is going to be the uvula hanging down there, kind of like a punching bag. Okay, then we're going to go over our tonsils. So your tonsils are going to be starting up here. We're going to have your pharyngeal tonsil. Then we'll have your palatine tonsil. And your lingual tonsil. Okay. So then we're going to go over our teeth. So I'm going to switch models here. So our different kinds of teeth. You're going to have 2 incisors on each side. So 4 total. You have 1 canine on each side, so 2 total. And you have 2 premolars or bicuspids on each side, so 4 total. And then you'll have 3 big molars in the back on each side, so 6 total. Alright, going into some more in-depth structures on the tooth. So here I have my big tooth here. We have my crown. It's going to be structure on the outside. We're going to have my root, which is going to be on the inside. I'm going to have my root canal, which is going to be this structure where the blood vessels are flowing through. Okay, and then a couple of terms for the type of material in each place. Up here on the crown, on the outside, this white material, it's called enamel. Inside that, in the root, is made up of dentin. So this would all be dentin. Then we're going to have cementum. Cementum is going to be what covers the root once we get deeper into the gums. So it's all this. Here, and here, and here as well. Okay. Then this structure here, this will be your pulp cavity. Okay, so that's all we got for our teeth. So now we're going to go into salivary glands. So salivary glands make your saliva. So I take my big head here, looking at a side view. Up here is going to be your parotid salivary gland. Then I'm going to move back to the smaller tongue model. We have the side view on this tongue here. We're going to have the sublingual salivary gland and the submandibular salivary gland. And you can also see the very tiny ducts. Here would be these little pink structures here, as well as here.
Now we'll take a more in-depth look at the pharynx. The first structure we're going to look at is the nasopharynx, and that's going to be this region here. And you'll just know that that's from the meatai and the conchae all the way down to the uvula. And that will be the nasopharynx. The next structure will be the oropharynx, and that'll be this region found here. That will be from the tip of the uvula to the root of the tongue. So it'll be this region right in here. That'll be called your oropharynx. The next structure will be the laryngopharynx, and that will be from the base of your tongue to the region where your esophagus will start, and that region will be called your laryngopharynx. The next structure will be the epiglottis. That'll be here. That is the flap that will cover your trachea when food is moving through to get into your esophagus so that you don't choke. The glottis would be the actual opening in your trachea, allowing air to pass down into your lungs. So that'll be the actual opening. Your esophagus, that's that flap tube on the back of your throat. It sits posterior to your trachea and anterior to your spinal column, and that leads food down into your stomach. Take a more in-depth look at the stomach. The first term in your lab manual will be the cardia, and that'll be this region here, and that is where the food will enter the stomach. The next region will be the fundus, and that'll be this region here. The next region will be the body, and that'll be that big middle part in here. So that'll be this body. That'll be the whole middle in this region. And then there's a pylorus region, and that's going to be right down here at the end of the stomach. The next term will be the lesser curvature, and the lesser curvature, which will be the smaller curvature, that'll be on this side of the stomach, and that connects to the lesser omentum, and that is just connective tissue that holds the stomach in place. The next term will be the greater curvature, and that'll be the outside of the stomach. See, it's much larger. That will be connected to the greater omentum, and that is also connective tissue to hold the stomach in place. If we go back down to the front, we'll look at the pylorus sphincter, and that'll be the sphincter separating the stomach from the small intestines. And then the last structure that you need to know will be these folds in here, and that will be rugae. We'll take a more in-depth look at the small intestine. If I remove this section of the large intestine, we can see the first part of the small intestine. There is no differentiation among the small intestine on this model, but just a regional aspect, we can classify them. So the first part of the small intestine will be the duodenum. That is going to be directly connected to the stomach. The next part, which we can just define as the middle, will be called your jejunum. The last part of the small intestine will be called your ileum. Your ileum directly connects to your large intestine at your cecum, and that will be this structure here. The next structure that you need to know would be the plicae circularis, and that will be found here. And that is similar to the rugae of your stomach, but that is what we call it in your small intestine. The next structure that we need to know would be your ileocecal valve, and that'll be seen here. That is the valve between your small intestine of your ileum and your large intestine at your cecum. So that'll be your ileocecal valve. If I pull this other model over here, we can see mesentery proper, and that's going to be this membrane of connective tissue to hold your small intestines in place. Now we'll take a more in-depth look at the large intestine. The first structure of the large intestine will be the ileocecal valve. That will be connecting the ileum of the small intestine to the cecum of the large intestine. So that'll be the ileocecal valve. Your next structure will be the cecum, and that'll be here. And the appendix, which will be found here. Now for a regional aspect, this will be the ascending colon or the right colon. This will be the transverse or middle colon. This will be the descending or left colon. Then this last bit of the colon where it's sigmoid, this will be the sigmoid colon. The next structure we're going to need to know is tenia coli, and that's going to be that muscular line that goes along the large intestine. The next structure will be haustra, and that'll be these little bumps along the large intestine. So that would be a haustra. You cannot see fatty appendages or epiploic appendages on any of the models, so refer to your cadavers and your laboratory instruction for that. The next structure will be the colic flexures. On the right side, between the right colon and the middle colon, we'll have the right colic flexure. On the left side, between the middle colon and the left colon, will be the left colic flexure. And then you will have two sigmoid flexures. First, where it will curve back to the middle from the left, and then where it will curve down to the rectum. The next structure will be the rectum, and that'll be found here. And here will be the anus. The anus has two sphincters. First one will be the internal anal sphincter, and that'll be that muscular lining on the inside. And also the external anal sphincter, and that'll be the muscular layer found on the outside. You have control over the external anal sphincter, but not the internal anal sphincter. And the last structure that you need to know is if I grab this other model, the connective tissue that holds the large intestine in place will be called the mesocolon, which will be found here.
Alright, we're going to take a look at some of the structures of your liver here. So when you're looking at it in the base, it's going to sit like this. But the liver in your body will actually sit like this. And we know that because you can find your inferior vena cava here. So that'll tell us that it's running up and down and sits posterior on the liver. So liver sits like this. Okay? A couple lobes. We have the left lobe here, the right lobe over here. So then, if I turn it around, so I'm looking at a posterior view. This little lobe right here is going to be the caudate lobe. Remember caudate, referring to tail. So caudate lobe. Then, if I look on the inside here, so I'm going to flip it again. This lobe right here is called your quadrate lobe. Kind of makes a square or a rectangle. Sits between the round ligament and the gallbladder. Okay, so between the gallbladder and the round ligament or ligamentum teres is the quadrate lobe. Okay. Next we're going to go over some of the bile flow structures. So we'll start at the gallbladder. It's going to be your gallbladder where excess bile is stored. The gallbladder, running out of that is the cystic duct. Okay, so then once we get here, it's going to get really zoomed in, and so it's going to be a lot better to look at your book, but we're going to do our best here. So, we know that this side is my left side, this side is left. So right here is going to be your left hepatic duct, and right here would be your right hepatic duct. And so when those two merge together, right there, it makes your common hepatic duct. And when your common hepatic duct merges with your cystic duct, it makes the common bile duct. So the big one to know here is the common bile duct, as well as the cystic duct and the gallbladder. And then just be aware of these other places where bile flows. Okay, now we're going to go over some of the ligaments going on. So going back here, we said this is your ligamentum teres, also known as round ligament, same thing. So if I turn my liver around to my anterior view, I'm going to see here my falciform ligament. Alright, so then if I turn it around like this, you can see that the falciform ligament meets the round ligament. So if the round ligament continued out more, like where my stick is going, it would be covered by the falciform ligament. So once it leaves the liver, the round ligament is covered by the falciform ligament. Then the last ligament that you need to know is this one on the top. It's known as the coronary ligament. Alright, we're going to go over your pancreas here. Your pancreas is this pleated organ here. Okay, a couple regions on the pancreas. We have your head, sitting closest to the small intestine. Your body would be this region here in the middle. And your tail would be this region out at the end. Your pancreatic duct is this white duct running all along the pancreas. It's actually in the middle of it. We have this cut away so you can see in there. What the pancreatic duct does is it carries enzymes from the pancreas and dumps them into the small intestine. So now we're going to zoom in, way in right here. The green that you see there, that is your duodenal papilla. And that is what the enzymes have to go through in order to get into the small intestine. Behind the papilla is a space, and that space is called the duodenal ampulla. And that duodenal papilla is regulated by a muscle. There's a muscle surrounding it. You can't see it on this model, but it's called the hepatopancreatic sphincter. And that can open and close that duodenal papilla so it can regulate the enzymes going in there. There's some really good pictures in your book that you'll want to check out to understand this concept.
Now we'll take a look at the digestive system. Just a quick overview of a path of food. Your path will enter your mouth here, travel down and into the esophagus. Through your esophagus, into your stomach, you'll reach the lower esophageal sphincter. Going through your stomach, we'll hit your pyloric sphincter. Through the pyloric sphincter, you'll enter the small intestine. From the small intestine, you'll weave all the way through and get to your large intestine through the ileocecal valve. From your small intestine, it'll go all the way around and go down to your rectum and then out through your anus.